Welcome to Sports Reporting Tips from the Pros, sponsored by the Press Club of Long Island. My name is Brendan O'Reilly. I'm the president of PCLI. We are a chapter of the Society of Professional Journalists. If you are a journalist or you are a college student who aspires to be a journalist, we encourage you to join SPJ. You can find out how to join SPJ at spj.org, and you can find out more specifically about the Press Club of Long Island by visiting pcli.org. Our MC tonight is Jamie Stewart. Jamie is an award-winning journalist. He is a sports reporter on a freelance basis for Newsday and for Greater Long Island, and he has worked for numerous other publications and also has experience as an educator. So he's a really great fit to moderate tonight. Jamie, please take it away.
All right. Thanks a lot, Brendan. Really appreciate it. I am very excited to welcome you all to the Press Club of Long Island Sports Reporter Roundtable. I'm very excited to be joined by my three esteemed colleagues. And when you consider the fact that the three of them are in sports and sports happen at night, it's pretty amazing all three of you were able to join us for this. So I really appreciate that. Rich Cimini, Bruce Beck, Barbara Barker, thank you very much. You are three members of the New York sports media who really need no introduction, but a few sentences are warranted. Barbara is an award-winning sports features writer and columnist for Newsday. She has covered sports in New York for more than 20 years. She has been named the top sports columnist by the Associated Press on multiple occasions. Barbara, thank you so much for joining us.
It's great to be here.
Thanks for having us. All right. Bruce is the lead sports anchor at WNBC. He's actually at Jets headquarters right now because he couldn't leave. He's been there for more than a quarter century. I'm not aging you, Bruce. You look great. He's covered every sports event possible, including the Olympics. And in 2021, Broadcasting and Cable honored Bruce as the top local sports anchor in America. He has a house full of New York Emmy Awards. Bruce Beck, thank you so much for joining us.
Jamie, thank you very much. When you invite me to something, I'm there, my friend.
I appreciate it. And last but not least, and he might be in the room next to you or in the same room, I'm not sure, Rich Cimini. Rich covers the Jets for ESPN after working for Newsday and the Daily News. He's been covering the Jets full-time since 1989. God bless you. Rich was named New York Sports Writer of the Year in 2020. His work has been recognized by countless media organizations. Rich, thank you so much, my friend.
Good. It's good to see you face to face. You've been texting me a lot of Jets dread lately, so as we can just talk it out here on a Zoom.
I was supposed to be off camera. Okay, sorry.
Okay.
All right, before we get started, as Brendan said, we will have a Q&A session for everyone near the end of our Zoom. If you have questions for our panelists, put the questions in the chat, or you can press the raise hand icon under reactions if you want to ask the question on camera. If not, I'll ask it. So, Rich, let's kick it off. Let me start with you. I'm not going to ask you about Aaron Rodgers. What's the biggest change in your job description since you graduated Syracuse University?
Wow. So that was a long time ago. That was 1985, and I'm dating myself there. So the biggest change, of course, is social media. I guess probably around 2010, it really became a factor. I think that's when I joined Twitter. In the pre-2010 days, pre-social media days, we would save scoops and big stories for the next morning's paper so we could get the back page. Nowadays, there's no such thing as saving something. I mean, if you save something for 5 minutes, you can get beat on a story. So it's really a 24/7 news cycle. If the Jets sign a quarterback right now, Jamie, I'll probably have to leave this chat. So my phone is right here, and that's just the way the business is now. It's really 24/7. So I think that would be the biggest difference.
And Barbara, would you agree? What do you think?
Oh, I absolutely agree. I mean, in one way, it's great because it does bring you closer to your readers. You get more feedback, but the 24/7 aspect is not always so great for your life. Yeah, I think it is the biggest change. And I think it's twice as much work as what it used to be. In a weird way, it's twice as much work, but yes, that's the biggest change.
It's a lot less downtime, right?
Yeah.
Bruce, how about you?
I agree with Barbara. You have to do more. You have to be able to be versatile. You've got to do so many aspects of the job now, from writing to producing to getting the interviews yourself. Rich is right about social media. It's given everybody a free press pass. Therefore, everybody can weigh in on things. I think opinion is more important than ever. I tend to be a guy who likes to evoke opinion, talk to guests, get what they're thinking. But I find more and more I'm making a statement without being crazy. I'm trying to give what I really feel. So I think the industry has changed. There's more people in it than ever. I think that everyone has their opinion. Everyone wants to do it a different way. I don't think we're as tolerant as we used to be. Everyone is quick to criticize. So I think what you have to do, Jamie, is you have to stay level-headed, you have to stay grounded, and you have to be able to handle criticism well yourself.
Yeah, I mean, those are excellent points. I have social media as a talking point a little later on, but since we're talking about it, I'm switching it up real quick. Bruce, you know, you're talking about giving your opinion, and there's so many people on social media, they give their opinion. And I just remember years ago, sportscasters were supposed to just tell the story, say the game highlights, and that's it. But now, with talk radio, yes, but with the debate shows exploding, I feel more and more sportscasters and reporters are, I don't want to say pressured, but inclined to give their opinion on social media. I don't know, do you feel that way? And do you feel comfortable giving your opinion about those things?
I do feel comfortable about it, but what I'm trying to do is be someone who's giving something different. I always say about social media, take them places they can't go, tell them things about you that they don't know. If I could show them a behind the scenes where the Yankees are at spring training, or if I could show myself hanging with my grandkids, they like that stuff. So I think you have to be creative. And Rich can give his opinion more because he's covering a team. Barbara's a columnist, a great columnist, and she can give her opinion. I think I tend to spend more time on hustle, getting something that somebody else can't get, and delivering that. That's social media too. You're scoring because Rich is going to be with a multitude of journalists covering the Jets. But if I can get a Jet at a function that night and get a little bite that nobody else has, then I've done my job. So opinion important. I think hustle important, and trying to be creative even more important.
Yeah, I totally agree. No one probably hustles more than you. Rich, regarding social media, I don't know if you can even tell us this or not, but does ESPN, do they want to give your own personal opinion on tweets? Do they encourage those type of things with certain stories?
I feel like you've been reading my mailbox today, Jamie, because we got a large social media guideline email from our editors at ESPN today. So like the new social media guidelines, I mean, we're allowed to give opinion. I mean, sports is based, I mean, it's like you're in a bar, everyone's got an opinion in a bar, you're watching a game on TV. And so, sure, I'm going to give my opinion on the Jets, the NFL, maybe some other sports, baseball or whatever, college football. I'm not going to go down a lane that I'm not familiar with, though. I'm going to stay out of the political arena. It's just, I'm not an expert in that area. I think people go to my Twitter account or Instagram because I'm a quote unquote expert on the Jets. And so I just try to stay in my lane. And, at least that's what they tell me, according to my social media guidelines that I got today. But no, that's always, I just do it when I feel comfortable. But they don't want me to go out and say Robert Saleh should be fired. Now, I don't think that, but they don't want us to do those kind of hot takes. They want opinion rooted in fact. So that's what I try to stay to.
And Barbara, regarding social media, and you know that if you tweet something, you're going to get comments, and shocker, not all of them are nice. What's your take on reacting to comments on social media? And it's sometimes you have that urge and it's like you want to say something, but your inner voice says, don't do it. What are your thoughts as far as being a professional reporter and you get those comments online?
I mean, I think probably I have a different experience than these two guys do, because let's see, there is a fair amount of misogyny on social media. There just is, it's a fact. So sometimes I'll just write something and it doesn't matter, and they'll just call me a stupid whatever. So that I ignore. But I do like engage with people. And I mean, I wanted to just say something building off what Bruce said before. What kind of differentiates these two guys, or even the three of us, as we all can have opinions, but so can like the dude in his mom's basement. All right. And so what differentiates us is we go out and report. I mean, Bruce, everywhere I show up, Bruce is more than any television guy I've ever seen. Isn't it true? You know, Rich?
Absolutely.
I mean,
Absolutely.
he's there. He's got his feet on the ground. And that's what we have to bring people. So opinion is awesome, but you have to back it up by, you know, being there and doing things like that. I think that's really the most important thing I could tell aspiring journalists.
And Barb,
Yeah, go ahead.
accuracy over immediacy, right? I mean, isn't that what we strive for?
I mean,
Yeah, sometimes sometimes you get a little caught in that, but I mean, not you, me. Sometimes you're like, but yes, I agree.
well, I mean,
Yeah.
that's a great point, Bruce. When I, teaching classes at Hofstra and Stony Brook, and everyone is so anxious to get first, and then they fact check later. That's not the way it's supposed to be done. You're talking about aspiring journalists. Barbara, can I ask you, and I want to ask each of you, how did you break into the business? And do you think the same path is feasible today for students and young reporters?
I broke into the business. I worked at my student newspaper, and I grew up in the Midwest, and there's not really celebrities in the Midwest. Our celebrities are, our sports stars. So it's not like here where, a little bit less, I mean, everybody was crazy about sports. I love the Pistons. I grew up near Detroit. I even sort of loved the Lions, which is finally paying off after all these years. But I mean, I loved college. My family was really into the University of Michigan. And so all I wanted to do, I went to Michigan. I wanted to cover Michigan football. And that's the way I got into it. But I also got into it like I worked there. Then I worked at a small newspaper. I did go to graduate school, which was helpful. But I worked at I jumped around at a bunch of newspapers looking for jobs and opportunities. All right. And do I think that's the best way anymore? I'm not sure. I would tell a young person to go work in Grand Rapids, Michigan. All right. I think sometimes it's better to get the biggest possible job you can get go to ESPN and be a peon and maybe work your way up. There's several different ways, or start your own. I mean, it's not the same way anymore. I don't know. I'd love to hear what you guys think too. I mean, that's a complicated thing, and I get asked that a lot.
Rich, how did you get into the business, and do you think it's still feasible?
I was really lucky because I absolutely knew in junior high school what I wanted to do. I wanted to be a sports writer. So I was just on a very focused path. I went to Syracuse. I got a great education at the best journalism school there is. I'm partial, but
I agree. Here.
Yeah, and I highly recommend internships for aspiring journalists while you're in college. I was lucky. I had an internship at Newsday before my senior year at Syracuse, and it really laid the foundation for me. When I graduated from Syracuse, I got a job full-time at a Newsday, which is really hard to do. I was covering high schools. I did that for a little bit, and we had an all-star staff in the sports department. So I was so happy to be just doing high schools, and then gradually worked my way up and stayed there for 11 years, and I worked for the New York Daily News for 14 years, and I've been at ESPN for 13 years. So I've been really lucky. I've worked at 3 great organizations, and all in New York. And I'm a native New Yorker. I'm from Long Island, so I've been really lucky. I didn't have to go cross country to work at a smaller job. I've been in the New York market the whole time. I think it's feasible, but again, I strongly suggest internships. It's a really great way to meet people and network, because I think networking in our business is just so important.
Couldn't agree more. Bruce, how about you?
I started in my mom's kitchen. She grabs the utensil. Doris Beck now starts baking the cake. She's got the frosting. That's where it began for me. And she looked back at me and think I was a little crazy, but always let me go because she might have known I was onto something. I was imitating Marv Albert as an 8-year-old. Right sideline to Busher, hands to Frazier, deep right corner Bradley, side jump Willis, yes, and it counts, and a foul on Elvin Hayes. I memorized 7 commercials: Eastern Airlines, Schaefer Beer Manufacturers, Hanover Trust, Ultraman 5000. I just loved it. I played sports. I wanted to be an NBA player. Probably wasn't good enough, but this became a vicarious thrill. And I went to Ithaca College, Rich, maybe the best television program in the country. I have great respect for Syracuse, by the way. And of course, my kids went to Michigan. So I know you guys are from great blood, go blue. I think it's about mentorship. I think it's about reps. There is no template for success. You've got to get the experience out there. I went to Ithaca College, was an accounting major, and ended up on the TV and radio station. And then I went to Suburban Cablevision TV3 under the tutelage of Bob Lee, the great ESPN star, for 4 years. And then I went to MSG Network for 12 years. Then I became a freelancer for 3 after that. My contract wasn't renewed, which proves that, hey, this career is up and down. It's how you bounce back from disappointment, from being canned. I remember talking to Hugh B. Brown once after he was fired as the Knicks head coach. He goes, Bruce, you're effing nobody until you're canned. And I remember when I wasn't renewed at MSG in 1994, I called Hubie and said, Hubie, I'm really somebody now. I became a freelancer for 3 years. And then in 97, I auditioned for NBC and I've never left. But this career, this field is all about ups and downs, how you pick yourself off the ground. It's about relationships, preparation, and homework. And attention to detail is one of my mantras. Be accurate, you know? So I don't know, Jamie, I just think, as Rich said, internships are great, but you got to get reps. You got to do it. I don't care where it is, your own podcast, something at your school paper, just do it.
It's like Zach Wilson. I mean, you could sit there and listen to Aaron Rodgers all day, but at some point, he's got to get on the field, right?
Exactly.
There's no template for success. I love that, Bruce. I want to talk a little bit about local sports, because at big networks, TV stations, local sports, let's be honest, they've been cut for years now. Local newspapers have been cut. Bruce, have you ever had discussions with management as to why it's important to keep your sports department? I mean, I know that sounds ridiculous, but I mean, you know how the landscape has gone the last few years. Have you ever had to talk with people behind the scenes?
We talk all the time. For us, it's about local teams, local themes, local stories. How can you contribute to the broadcast? And we're doing it in more ways than ever because we're including the 4 o'clock and the 5 o'clock show. So my 6 o'clock cast might be less by a minute, and my 11 o'clock show might be less by 45 seconds. But I still can make a contribution to the overall team by finding a story, by doing some game that nobody else is covering, Fordham against Iona. And they still think it's important because local news, we can go to the community, and especially during COVID, we were an information source for people. We told them where to go, what to do. We focused on the heroes and why they were important. I think we never realized that local news is as important to the community as during the COVID period. So yeah, it's frustrating. I'm always fighting for my time. But if there's a sports story like yesterday, Aaron Rodgers, that's the lead of the news at 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock, and 6 o'clock. And I still do the sportscast. And on other days, I'm kind of pushed a little bit to the side. You try to be a team player and you try to go with it. But I still think we're important. It's just people are receiving us on phones now, on different, vehicles on the web. It's just different. It's evolved. It's changed.
No, absolutely. And to the aspiring journalists out there, I mean, you have to be able to be versatile and be able to deliver, like Bruce said, in many different ways, with your phone, with your writing, on camera, behind the scenes. They want you to do everything. You're a Swiss Army knife. Barbara, Newsday is one of the rare local papers that's still going and thriving. And I want to know, why do you think that is?
Well, one reason is we're hyper local with the high schools. I mean, we cover high schools like no one else. And when we get the information, I mean, the top read story at Newsday is usually like, top 30 lacrosse players in Nassau County or something. That is our bread and butter. And that has really done it. And we continue to cover, all the, well, not all, I mean, we don't cover like the Devils, but we continue to cover local teams and have a huge commitment to that. I think we, think that's why the New York Times is completely pretty much dropped its local coverage. I'm trying to think.
Right.
the daily news is still, but doesn't travel with teams. Really, it's Newsday and the New York Post that travel with teams. And so we are one of two sources. I mean, and ESPN is different. I meant as far as local newspapers, we are one of two sources that has a beat writer there every day.
Rich, what are your thoughts on the changing sports landscape as far as just, the local versus the national? I mean, you're, like I said, you're a lifelong Long Islander, never had to leave here, and you've seen the shift. What are your thoughts on the change of the landscape?
I don't do much local anymore. I don't do any local, but I started as a high school beat writer at Newsday, and I was doing Nassau and Suffolk, and had pretty much free reign to do whatever I wanted for a couple of years. And I still read Newsday. I'm probably the only person in my neighborhood who still gets the actual paper delivered on my driveway every morning.
Wow.
I still like walking down the driveway, picking up the paper and reading it. And I do read it online as well, but I always read the high school sports in Newsday. I mean, I like keeping up to date on what's happening in my local school district or my former school district where I grew up at Sachem, and I always like to keep track of that. I think people love to see their name in the paper, whether it's the local weekly or Newsday. They get so much readership out of those type of stories because everyone wants to see their name in the paper. I love when I interviewed high school athletes and coaches, they wanted us to interview them. When I'm over here with the Jets, a lot of times, they don't want you to interview them. They blow you off. It happens. It's professional athletes. It's just a different, they're at a different stage in their life. They're not looking for publicity anymore because they can just go on their Instagram page now, like Aaron Rodgers did yesterday. He doesn't have to talk to us. He could talk directly to the sports fan, but by going on his IG account and making his statement about his injury. So that's how sports has changed as well. I still wish, there's a part of me that wishes I could still do local sports because I really miss it.
No, it's very interesting. You're right about that. With Aaron Rodgers, back in the old days, it would just be a big press conference, and we finally here. And now he can just do it from his couch, and his Instagram post becomes the lead story across the nation. A reminder to everyone watching: you can put your questions in the chat if you have questions in a few minutes for our panel, or you can hit the raised hand icon, and then you can ask a question on camera as well. All right, we'll have a little fun here. A little lightning round, maybe not. Best piece of advice you were given throughout your career. Barbara, start with you. It's a tough one.
No, it's not, but it's like obscene. I mean, I was going to swear. All right. And I don't want to swear. So,
yes, you can. I don't know.
Well, no, this is a bad word.
All right. Don't swear.
Stop caring what other people think. Do what you think is right. All right. So, if somebody, I mean, if it's your boss, you got to care a little bit. But I mean, I was very, a want to please Midwesterner, this and that. I'm really worried I'm making this mistake. And after a while, I just had to say, I know what I'm doing, and stop caring. Stop listening to other people. I know that sounds like a weird thing, but that was my.
I think that's great. Bruce, how about you? Can you think of like a great nugget of advice you were given maybe early on in your career or later?
Trust your instincts. Be yourself. Sports is about emotion, presentation, not just execution. I always talk to kids today, and I mentioned those three mantras, which is preparation, attention to detail, and relationships. Build relationships. It's all about relationships. If that guy moves up, you could move up with him. Okay? If that guy leaves, maybe you replace him. But the people that you deal with now, and Rich and Barbara, I totally agree. High school sports is my route too. And that's why Victor Cruz will interview me whenever I need him, because I covered him in high school. Ray Lucas, I covered him at Harrison, the Harrison Blue Tide. When a guy grows and makes it, you've got that relationship. It's all about dealing with the athletic directors, the PR directors, the athletes, the coaches, the general managers, the owners. Texting today is a great way to get a hold of somebody and to pass some information along. But my mother always taught me, if it's important, call the person.
Pick up the phone. Yeah.
If you're sending a condolence, if you're congratulating someone, make it real. Don't just send a text. That's the easy way out. So many of those recommendations have been given to me over the years. Mine is to just go for it. Give it your all. Shoot for the moon, settle for the stars. Who cares if you don't succeed that day? 3 for 10 and you're in the Hall of Fame. You're going to fail. Don't be afraid to fail. But the second time, learn from that mistake. Fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. So you've got to be able to learn along the way and adapt.
I feel like there's a whole book here you can write. This is great.
Bruce
Rick,
has done this before. He's really good at it.
No.
I wasn't going to say that. Rich, best piece of advice you've been given throughout your career?
I can think of one instance when I was a really young journalist at Newsday. I was probably just out of college. I was probably 22 or 23, and the late great sports editor Dick Sandler. I don't know if Barbara worked with him.
I didn't, but I interviewed with him.
Yeah, I mean, so he could be a tough guy. Kind of reminded me of Bill Parcells a little bit. You feared him a little bit and you respected him, but you played hard for him. And we had covered this story about a high school football player on Long Island who got hit in the head and tragically passed away. And then a couple of weeks later, Dick called me into his office and said, "We want you to organize. We're going to put together an all Long Island basketball team of all time. And we want you to be in charge of it. So, start on that project." And I was like, man, all time. I'm like, how are we going to do that? There's so many players. We'll never get it narrowed down. I go, this is a really hard story to do, Dick. And he's like, hard is going into the hospital, covering the family of the football player who just died 2 weeks ago. That's hard. This is easy. And so I walked out of that office feeling really bad and guilty, but I learned a lesson there that, it's sports. You want to have fun with it. You got to keep things in perspective. There's obviously really important stories that we cover, but it's sports and we have to keep it within that prism, I think. And I'll always remember that when I was like probably 23 years old.
That's a great one. And Derek Jeter told me something once that I always take to heart, Rich, and that is be tough, but be fair. If you're fair with the question, he can never look back on you and say, "Oh, you screwed me," Be tough, but fair. And most of the athletes will respect you for that. I remember that one now that I'm thinking about it, Jamie.
Yeah, no, those are all great. And Bruce, to your point about relationships, I mean, Long Islanders that I covered in high school, basketball, like a Tobias Harris or a Danny Green, every time they come back from Long Island, if I text them, "Hey, can we do something?" Sure, no problem. Because you've built that relationship and you've built that trust, and they know you're a fair person. And I was thinking I wasn't going to give my piece of advice, but as you guys were talking, I was thinking of what would be mine. And so I worked when I first started at News 12 Long Island with the late great Bob Wolf, and Bob was a legend, obviously, and I would work with Bob till 11 at night every night, and sometimes later when we watch Yankee games till 2 a.m. And Bob would have a great show, and he wasn't telling me this to put me down, but I would be like, "Oh, Bob, that was a great show." He goes, "You can't be comfortable." I said, "No, I know. I'm a young kid coming out of college. I know." I said, "But that was great." And he told me one thing that I always remembered. He said, "Jamie, you're only as good as your last show. If I'm bad tomorrow, that's all anyone's going to remember."
Marv, same thing. Marv said, "You're only as good as your last show, and you always have a show to go to next," which is a good thing if you bomb the last show.
Right. You can make it up.
Bob Wolf had another good one, Jamie. He said, I saw him at Yankee Stadium later in his years. He was probably 94, and his lovely wife, Jane, had dropped him at the stadium because Bob didn't drive. And
what Jane did.
Jane did, and he dropped him at the stadium, and he comes up to me and goes, Bruce, come here. I go, "Yes, Bob." And I'd worked with him at MSG Network. He had taught me so much over the years. He goes, "I almost did it." I said, "What do you mean you almost did it?" He goes, "I almost had it." I said, "What did you almost have?" He goes, "A perfect show." I said, "What happened?" He goes, "Just missed." And it made me think at age 95, having done Alan Amici's perfect game, Don Larson's perfect game, Alan Amici, the greatest football game that ever played, he's called those games. He said, there's no such thing as a perfect show. It just hasn't happened yet, but maybe you'll get there someday. I thought that was a good lesson to learn, that we all shoot for perfection. But as Michael Phelps said recently to me, the new perfection is imperfection. Just look at Simone Biles, the best gymnast ever. Sometimes it just doesn't work.
That's great advice. I remember when I first started with Bob and we were going through his old files, and he kept everything. And one day, you know, I knew who Bob Wolf was, but again, I'm 23 years old at the time, and I'm looking through old pictures, and I look at him and I go, Bob, is this you interviewing Babe Ruth? And he's like, yep. I was like, wow, it's pretty amazing. Before we get to questions, I'm going to start, Rich, with you, because this is a chance for people not in the business. Because when they watch Rich on TV and Bruce on TV, and they read their stories, they read Barbara's stories. Man, I love that job. That job is amazing. These guys are so lucky, and they are. You've earned it, but you're lucky to be living a dream job. What is one thing about your profession that you wish people not in the business would know? Rich, I would start with you. Something about your job that people don't know that you, I don't say have to do, but that you go through on a daily basis.
Oh, I think it's a lot of, and we are privileged and very lucky. And believe me, every time I walk in this, like walking into MetLife Stadium on Monday night for the opener, and it's my 35th straight year covering the Jets, and I'm saying to myself, and I even tweeted it, you know, how lucky am I to be doing this? So there's definite appreciation, but it is a job. It's not all fun and games. It's incredibly long hours. I got out of MetLife Stadium at 3:30 on Monday night, 3:30 in the morning, because of the obvious major news that, you know, rocking the sports world with Aaron Rodgers' season-ending injury. They asked me to write an oral history type story, which requires, it's very time consuming to write one of those off the injury. So it was basically writing a 1,200 word feature starting from scratch at about 1 o'clock in the morning. And, you know, that's why I was there till 3:30. So it's longer hours. I would encourage aspiring journalists to, you know, you want to have a work-life balance. Sometimes we get so obsessed with this that we lose perspective on other things in life. And I am as guilty as anyone. I think I have 2 older kids now, they're in their 20s, but I missed a ton of, you know, of their high school events, high school sporting events that I missed, you know, travel soccer and travel lacrosse that I wish I could go back and attend those. And I missed so many of them because I was just so focused. So I think having a good work-life balance is really important, and it's healthy. And I would say that just the job, and we don't always get free food. I think everyone has this perception that we get incredibly great. Now the Jets do feed us really well. Yeah. I will admit that. And Bruce can attest to that, having been out here so much, but it's not all about free food and getting great seats in the press box. It's really a lot of long hours as well.
Absolutely. And I can definitely attest to the work-life balance. Barbara, what about you? What is one thing about your job that people don't really know?
I also want to start off with saying that I know, like, I watched Coco's, you know, win that US Open last weekend. I'm sitting like in the 20th seat, these incredible seats. And I'm like, this is the greatest job in the world. Don't always feel that way. When you don't feel that way, one reason I steered clear of baseball, although I've covered it, is baseball is just, and I had kids, it's a grueling day. You have to get there. I don't know, a night game, it used to be you'd have to get there at like 1:30 and you wouldn't be home, you wouldn't be leaving until 12:30, or who knows, depends when the baseball game ends. It's really the long hours, and we don't get free tickets. All right. I mean, we do get a press pass. I mean, I have people all the time. Can you get me tickets? Can you get me tickets? No, I can't get you tickets. You know, if my kids go to a game, my kids, like, I personally could not afford to take my kids to a lot of Knicks games. All right. Crazy. We would go to Philadelphia, rent a hotel room, and take our kids to really good seats there. And it would be cheaper than watching a game at Madison Square Garden. So, I mean, there's things like that. It's like, I get really great stuff, but it's not like, you know, it's not a vacation.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Totally agree with everything you said. Those long hours, like you said, but that's the price you pay. And I tell my students, you're covering a Yankee World Series game at 8 o'clock at night. You're not pulling up at 7:30. You're doing things at 2 p.m, and then the players aren't speaking until 12:30, 1 a.m, and you're not home till 3. So it is what it is. Bruce, how about you? We've heard about the long hours. We know about the free food and the not free food. What about you? What's something about your profession that people wouldn't know?
You need to be nervous. I interviewed the great Sparky Anderson. He was managing the Tigers. He was 60 at the time. And I went up to him before the game and said, Sparky, are you nervous? And he goes, nervous? The day that I'm not nervous is the day I quit. And I said, why? And he goes, because it means I care. So if your stomach is churning, when Cimini walked in the other night, it was electric at MetLife Stadium. It was like, I've never seen anything like it. Our hearts are pounding too. And you can be nervous, and it's good to be nervous. If I'm doing a show late at night and I'm usually taping the morning news, I go like this, come on. You got to have adrenaline. If you're too if you're too down, you won't have any energy. So I think it's okay to be nervous. It means you're making progress. It means you're getting somewhere. When you have to go to the bathroom early in the morning on a day that's important, it's normal. It's good. It means you're getting ahead. So, I think there's a lot of things.
That's great.
I don't sleep either, ask Rich. And one of the great work ethics that I've seen in this business. But the other thing is you never stop learning. You never stop learning. They sent me to a guy named Barry Nash. He coaches all of our talent at NBC. And I was like 9th in line that day. I had so much going on. I was preparing. And I said to my boss, I'm going to see Barry Nash. He's going to coach me now. I've been doing this for 44 years in New York. Are you kidding me? What am I going to teach this guy? But I went grudgingly. And Barry Nash, who's an unbelievable teacher, we went over a lot of stuff. He taught me to use my hand and not point and not go like this, but you're welcoming the viewer. You're bringing him into your home. And I always use that like once in every broadcast. And I walked out of that thing, and now Barry Nash is like one of my best friends because I listened and I went with it, and I never stopped learning. And still to this day, I'm learning from my mistakes. I'm learning from others' mistakes. It's never ending. We've never worked a day in our lives, all three of us, because, we do something that we love. But at the same time, we're always grinding to get better.
I think that's great. I just learned something right now. I want to start doing that. I want to bring you in. I don't want to make it like Tony Soprano. Right. And and I love what you said about being nervous. I'm sitting here, I've got all my notes. I was nervous before this, just preparing and getting everything ready. We have a question. Let's go to Josh. Josh, you have a question for the panel.
Yep, that's me. Thanks for joining us, actually. I just was wondering, what do you love about your job? Do you have a favorite thing you love about your job?
Fire away.
I would say that the favorite thing is the adrenaline, the emotion, the ability to cover the greatest athletes in the world, to cover your home teams. People are at the water cooler talking about their sports that they love. And Barbara's versatile. She could do any sport. Rich can do any story. I think if you're versatile, it's really important. And if you try different things, but the thing that I love about it is just the relationships, dealing with people and being able to not only work with my coworkers, but to connect with the athletes. I think that's my favorite part more than the actual broadcasts.
Barbara, how about you? What is your favorite part of your job?
I like many aspects of my job and attending events, but I think what I really like is when I find a story and I know it's a really good story and it's different from a story anybody else has, and I get it and I'm actually writing it in my mind, putting together the pieces of it. I hate that part, but I also love it because I know that this is what I can this is what I love to do best. All right. Which is like not a really often the time that takes place right in this room here, which is like a small office I have in my house. So, I mean, it's weird. That's my favorite part. I mean, I also love, I've been to the NBA Finals, Super Bowl, all that stuff. That's great. But really, when you know that you are going to tell a story that nobody else knows and you're on the precipice of doing it, it's an unbelievable feeling.
And Rich?
I think it's covering the big story. Now, not everything we cover is the big story. There are many days I'm out here in Florham Park in training camp, standing on the sideline for 2.5 hours in 95-degree heat, sweating, my shirt is soaked, covering a football practice, which can be tedious. That's not the big story. But those days, you're okay with those days because like Monday night, for instance, big story with Aaron Rodgers. Now, no one wanted to see him get hurt. I mean, that's just an awful, awful thing, but it's a big story. So all of a sudden you feel the adrenaline starting to rush and your journalistic instincts are kicking in. So I knew Vinny Testaverde was in the stadium that night. He was an honorary captain. He was watching from a private box, and he of course had the same exact injury in the 99 Jets season opener. And so I'm thinking, I was texting with Vinny during the game right after Rodgers got hurt, trying to get his voice into my story. And then Boomer Esiason, I started texting with him. He was watching from home and he said he was sick to his stomach and so deflated. And so I got him in the story. And so that made the story come to, alive a little bit more. So it was a big story. And like I said earlier, I was there till 3:30 in the morning, but I wasn't really tired because, you get that adrenaline rush. In May, I went down to Jupiter, Florida and spent a whole day with probably my boyhood idol, Joe Namath. He was turning 80. I asked him a few months ahead of time if I'd come down and do a story on Joe Namath turning 80. And he said, sure, come on down. So I went down. I was there for about 6 hours. I drove with him to his elementary school where his granddaughter went to school. We picked her up. I literally did everything for an entire day and wrote a 3,000-word story that turned out, I thought, pretty well. And so that, again, the big story. I think that's what I like so much about the business.
Because you get that rush and it's just the hair standing up and you're ready to go. Barbara, we have a question for you. How should reporters go about covering losing high school and college teams, being sensitive to the fact that these are not pros, they're young men and women, as far as the sensitivity factor? Good question.
I could give my opinion. I don't cover a lot of high schools and colleges, but I have. And college is one thing. I mean,
high school
with kids under 18, I'm pretty sensitive about, they don't know how to deal with the media. So, I mean, I would even start off, and I would start off an interview, and I even do that with people that don't deal with media much. If I ask you a question, you don't want to answer it, you don't have to answer it. I will say that, I mean, to younger kids, just because, you don't want to, there's an experience differential and you don't want to trick somebody into doing something, not that you would do that much. But, college, it depends what college. If it's, college kids are used to dealing with media. If we're talking elite college basketball players, I don't think they get treated that much differently than pro players.
All right, let's go to some hands up here. Greg has been up for a little bit, I guess. Gregory, you have a question for the panel. See if we can get you up here in a second.
I've met Bruce several times at Belmont Park, and I still am a veterinarian, but I'm doing media and I cover radio for Hofstra. This question's for Bruce, but anyone else that wants to pipe in. We have a lot of difficult issues with horse racing. So I'm curious what he views the future to be with all these problems circling around. And I know a lot of the great writers from years ago, they don't have jobs anymore.
I love the sport, Greg, and appreciate all the work that you've done over the years. And, I feel for the industry right now because it's going through such a difficult time with the deaths of all these horses. And I think we have to figure this out. Churchill Downs actually closed down. That was a major story when they closed their meet to try to figure out what's going on there. That means that there's something wrong in the world. And I mean, it's going to happen. There's going to be horses that go down in the middle of the biggest races. We saw it at Saratoga this summer. My heart bled. When I saw that happen at the finish line with the Brilliant Filly. But we've got to, as an industry here, find a way to make the safety of the horses our number one priority, or else this industry is going nowhere. And that is where the brilliant minds of the sport have to come together. And whatever it takes, whether it's about medications not being used, whether it's about how often horses are allowed to race, whether it's changes in the preparation, in the conditioning, I don't know what it is specifically, but I'm rooting for the industry. I was there when American Pharoah won the Triple Crown. It was one of the great days I've ever covered in all of my sports career, 37 years without a Triple Crown, and to be at Belmont Park, right near the great Anthony Causey, and then to see Justify win the Triple Crown as well after I had gone 13 times and horses that failed making the Triple Crown. So there is something special about the industry, and there's a beauty to these animals. But if we don't figure it out soon, there's a major problem, and we've got to get down to the bottom of it.
Bruce, I've covered one horse race in my life, and it was Belmont, with Justified won the Triple Crown. Our regular horse racing writer at ESPN couldn't make it, so they called me and said, "Can you cover Belmont?" I said, "I never covered horse racing in my life." They said, "You'll be fine." So I got to see history on that day. It was a pretty special day.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Anyone else have any opinions on what's going to go on with the horse racing?
I am not qualified. I have been to maybe Rich one horse race, but it wasn't one that was spectacular like that.
No, it's a good.
Well, the problem is actually even larger than what even many of the media anticipate, because this has been going on for 20, 30 years. And I believe that the problem won't get solved until we have one like commissioner for racing, just like they have for all the other major sports. But the barrier is that every one of these independent racetracks, no one wants to get along. They want to run their own show. So it'd be like every football team deciding what the rules are when you get in their stadium.
Yeah.
It's being overseen by the government now, but the government is actually, I'm friendly with many people out of DC, but I've never known them to solve a problem easily for us.
Uniformity in boxing has worked, and it needs to work in this industry too.
Thank you, Greg. Let's move.
I'm with you. Thank you. I'm
Kevin's
with you.
had his hand up for a long time. I want to get to Kevin. Kevin, go for it.
Hey, everyone. Thanks so much for doing this. Big fan of all of your work. Right now, I'm in my third year of school at Hofstra, journalism major, sports concentration, and I really enjoy television, radio, print. I get my reps in as much as possible in all three. But with the trend, and this is for any of the three of you, with the trend in print journalism being uncertain for a 20-year-old like myself, the boom in podcasting over the last few years, where do you think I should focus my energy and my time, my reps, or should I continue to just put, maybe 33% of all my time into each and keep working to get better in all of them so I have that versatility?
I mean, I'll answer this since I am not as versatile as you two. I don't do as much television. And for it, I wish I had done it earlier in my career. I mean, I'm a writer. I like to write. But I hate to say it, I think, maybe if you did 33%, that is enough. But you gotta be able to do a little bit of everything. But writing is really, diminishing in importance. And I hate to say that because I'm a big reader and everything else, but I look at what my kids, I look at the way they consume media. And, I think podcasting is really interesting, actually. I don't know how many people, even it's hard to break through on that, but I think I would do a little bit of everything. But we also get people, I've worked with people that cannot write. You have to be able to write on a basic level, all right? Or a little bit better than basic.
Evan, what's your passion? Like, what do you love to do?
Well, I came into school loving talk radio, and I love hosting shows. I love interviewing. Interviewing has really become my passion. But then I tried print journalism, and I was open to it, and I love it. And then I tried television, and I realized, I'm better at this than I thought, and I love doing it. So my passion really just is reporting on sports and anything in sports, anything I can get my hands on, I just love to do.
Yeah, no, I think I mean, I think you're on the right path. We're going to go to Greg in a second, but when I first started, all I wanted to do was just be the guy with the funny catchphrases on ESPN. And throughout the years, the art of storytelling has become my passion. So you never know what you're really going to fall in love with.
Evan,
Greg, yep, go
Evan,
ahead.
Evan, writing, the key to writing is, as Keith Jackson once said to me, the key to writing is rewriting. And you just got to keep working at it. And Barbara's right. If you can't write, you can't do TV. If you can't write, you can't do radio. So don't give up on that. I know one of your classmates, Yao Bonsu, I see him all the time. He's doing an internship now at WNBC. He's doing amazing. Pete Silverman's a great instructor there at Hofstra. You should utilize Pete's knowledge. And Jane Bryant Quinn, a famous economist in 1982 at the Ithaca College commencement, said, follow your opportunities. And that means you might want to be a journalist now, just a writer. You might end up on TV. You might be a podcaster now. You might end up as a fireman. Whatever it takes you, go for it and follow your opportunities. But I'd say versatility, get as much experience as you can in everything, and don't pigeonhole yourself.
Absolutely. Greg, you're up next. The other Greg.
Great panel. I don't know who gets credit for putting together this
This guy.
all-star lineup.
This guy.
It's like the Mount Rushmore of New York reporters right here.
Wow.
But I'm like Rich Cimini. I still look forward to getting that Newsday in the driveway every morning. And I know I'm in the minority in terms of opening up the newspaper and actually reading it. I enjoy that. But I'd like to get a comment from all three, and even Jamie as well. Just a comment on the state of journalism overall, and maybe specifically sports journalism. As we know, it's not the same as it was 20 years ago, 30 years, maybe even 5 or 10 years ago, because there are so many newspapers that have shut down, so many sports departments that have downsized. It's a tough business to break into now and also to survive in. I'd just like to know, the panelists, what your thoughts are on the future of journalism, generally speaking, and is it a concern that things are going to be drastically different in a few years, and maybe to the detriment of the business?
I think one of the it's changed so much in sports. I know from my perspective, covering one team on a daily basis, if you're not at the game, then you're at home, you're watching the highlights on your phone, you've seen Sports Center on Sunday night. So the scores, the stats, so it's our job as journalists to bring something extra to the table, because you've already had it on your phone. You've already seen the highlights. So what can I bring you? So that's why I go into the locker room like Barbara and Bruce, and we're looking for something different. We're trying to get a player off to the side so we can get a one-on-one, maybe get a little bit of nugget of information that no one else has. So the explosion of, instant media has really forced us to do different things. Some people, and it takes us into a dangerous area, because some people try to attract attention with hot takes and by throwing out information. Just today there was a report on a reporter from FAN tweeted something about the Jets and Aaron Rodgers that was not true. And a couple of weeks ago, Tiki Barber tweeted something about the Jets and Robert Saleh that was not true, and he apologized on the air. So people are so quick to be different and want to be immediate and first that they're forgetting about the basic principles of journalism. Double check your facts, get another source to corroborate it. And so that leads us into kind of a real slippery slope there. But I still believe, even though newspapers are dying, I still believe there will be a lot of writing jobs in the future, for online papers, digital papers, websites like the one I work on, ESPN. We employ hundreds of people. So I still think there'll be writing jobs. They'll just be coming out on a different platform.
Go ahead, Barbara.
Yeah, I completely agree with Rich. I think the biggest problem is that it used to be like newspapers were this magical place because they offered a base middle class living to people that you could, And it wasn't like being a book editor, which a lot of people want to do, or going into something like that, where you had to have a rich parent in order to bankroll you your first 10 years in it. All right. You could get into newspapers and make money, and people came from all different classes. I think now it is really hard you have to be able to make money here, or, you know, you can wear 3 or 4 different hats in order to make enough money when you start off to like even thrive in journalism or live with your parents. I mean, I think it's really hard, and it's changed a little bit the voices that you're hearing in journalism, because you're tending to hear very upper middle class people who can afford to get into it a lot of times, you know, or can afford to have got a master's degree at Northwestern like I did. So I think it's kind of changed the complexion of, that on the, I think that's the hardest thing about, the disappearance of newspapers. I mean, newspapers were, kind of a solid middle class living for a lot of people.
And
Yeah,
Greg,
go
I
ahead.
think everything has changed. So the whole world has changed. So I thought that Andrew Cuomo, whether you like him or not, had something powerful that he always talked about during his COVID press conference. And that was that we need to reimagine. We need to figure out different ways to do things. We need to pivot. And so I'm not giving up on journalism as we know it. As Rich said, it's going to be different in the days ahead, but there's still a need for good, old-fashioned, what do they call it, Rich? Down and dirty journalism. And that's not a negative term. It's, let's scrub the floors, let's grind, let's do it the right way, and don't give up. And along the way, Barbara talked about Northwestern. I was rejected from Northwestern. That was my major choice when I wanted to apply to college back in 1973, 74. And I was rejected. I ended up shoe leather. That's it. Shoe leather journalism. Thank you, David.
Yeah.
And I ended up going to Ithaca College instead and marrying the woman of my dreams. So it works out. And I love to talk about the power of rejection. I showed those guys because I didn't get in there. And sometimes it motivates you when you're rejected.
Yeah, no, great points and a great question. Thanks a lot, Greg. I need to get to Cecilia. She's had her hand up for a while, a colleague of mine. Cecilia.
Hi, guys. This is a great panel. Thank you so much. I'm not a sports reporter, but I'm a reporter. And my question is for all of you. But I would like to start with Barbara, because you talked about the comments on social media, like the misogynistic comments. How do you handle that? Because I've gotten some really awful comments over the years, and I like to think I'm tough, but they really hurt.
Yeah, I mean, I try to ignore them, but it's not always easy. And when it first happened, it was just shocking, that you would get comments. You used to be able to leave comments at the end of stories at Newsday.
Yeah.
You don't do that anymore. Because, they would say certain words that couldn't be used, but people would use, a terrible word, but put an asterisk so it came through. And a lot of them were really difficult to deal with. I mean, I would just say, it's hard to ignore them, but you just have to ignore them. I don't always do that. I mean, I'll give an example. I tweeted the Liberty is the best team in New York right now. All right. Oh my gosh, you would have think that I said, you can't even believe the reaction that this got, they can't play basketball. You don't know what you're talking about. Those were the nice ones. I want to see them go 5-on-5 against the Knicks, then they can be the best. I mean, and those are the nice ones. The other ones just called me, an idiot or something worse than that. That's on Twitter. I pretty much ignore those. When I actually get emails that are really nasty. And if they're threatening, I don't answer them. Or actually I answer them, thank you so much for reading Newsday and writing, period. I send it back. But I mean, it's hard, and it's really hard, but it's not you. It's the people who are writing it that have the problem.
Yeah, I think Bruce, like being on air, I mean, it may be different for women, I don't know, but just comments about, you're working so hard, and people will comment about, like, at least for me, like my appearance or things like that. And it's just like, is this all worth it?
It is worth it. And you have to have a little bit of a hard layer to you these days. You really do. Like,
Yeah.
Because I get critiqued all the time. Oh, you're a moron. You ask easy softball questions. I get stuff like, I left. Why do I always lead with the Yankees, not the Mets? And I do what Barbara said she does with the ones that she can handle, which is Bob Lee taught me to do this. And that is, thank you very much. I really appreciate your comments. Once in a while, I'll come back with a little jab. Like, if you would watch the 6 o'clock news, I did lead with the Mets. You know what I mean? Like, I'll fight.
Yeah.
Not worth it to get into a personal battle. You can't win that battle, and you're going to get yourself in trouble. So you just have to have a strong outer shell, and you've got to figure out a way to repel these bad comments and have personal pride. I do the shows for myself and my staff. Sometimes I know they're not even watching because there's a big sporting event in another station. I don't care. You have such pride that if 80 people are watching or 80,000 are watching, you treat it the same way. It's all about personal pride. And don't let these guys get to you, Cecilia. You're breaking their heart.
Thank you. Thank you.
Totally agree. Like Barbara said, Cecilia, it's not you, it's the people commenting. And trust me, the comments aren't just for you. We all get them all the time. And just ignore them the best you can, or just be polite and say thanks for watching.
Cecilia, I'm probably the most hated Jet beat writer in history, based on that's probably, and Jamie will tell you that's probably not an exaggeration.
That is actually true. But go ahead.
It's true. I mean, I really try to be balanced in my coverage, and when a team's going great, I'll say great things. When it's going negative, I'm not going to lie. I'm just going to say what's going on. I had a tweet yesterday, and actually I retweeted Sauce Gardner, their star cornerback, who became very close to Aaron Rodgers. And he had a really poignant tweet yesterday and on Instagram. And he said, I did our handshake with the air today. He put a little broken heart emergency. Get well soon, bro. And I said, Sauce Gardner's comment on Aaron Rodgers' IG is particularly poignant. They became really close. It struck me as a really poignant comment by Sauce Gardner. And I tweeted it. And one of the first people to respond said, F you, Rich. And they did. And it's like, what? So there's a certain segment out there that are just, it's like in the cesspool. I just ignore those people. Certain people have good criticisms, and then I'll respond if it's like a legitimate criticism. But there's like a large segment out there who are just like Twitter tough guys. And yeah. I just really try to ignore them, because if you engage, it really plays with your mind. It really, really does. So I just try to ignore that.
Thank you, guys.
Good advice.
Great panel. Thank you.
Thank you, Cecilia. Take the high road as always. And my thanks to Rich, Bruce, and Barbara. Thank you to everyone for joining us this evening. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Guys, you were fantastic. Thank you so much. And I want to just quickly pass the mic to Press Club of Long Island President Brendan O'Reilly. Brendan?
Jamie, great job. This was a fabulous event. Thank you so much for putting this all together. As we mentioned, not only did Jamie host tonight, he also organized this. Thanks once again to Rich. Thanks once again to Bruce. Thanks once again to Barbara. We appreciate you being here. And thanks to our audience. We can't have these events without you. We really appreciate you being here and asking such great questions. If you want to watch a replay, you could do that immediately by going to the Press Club of Long Island Facebook page. We will also post it in a couple of days on YouTube, on the Press Club of Long Island YouTube. So we're sorry if you didn't get your question in tonight. We will have future events. We have an event next week on the 21st, which is an education reporting event. You could find out more about that by following PCLI on social media, and also by visiting our website, pcli.org. Once again, if you are a journalist, if you are an aspiring journalist, we encourage you to join the Society of Professional Journalists. And if you live on Long Island, designate the Press Club of Long Island as your chapter. We do events like this frequently. We have in-person events, and we're going to have more of those now that the pandemic is lifted. We're getting back into the swing of things. We also have our annual Press Club of Long Island Media Awards that is presented in June. We start taking entries into January or February for that. If you are a high school student, college student, or professional, you can compete with everyone on Long Island in various divisions: sports, news, entertainment. And whether you print, broadcast, like I said, sports, news, entertainment, we want you in SPJ. If this is the career for you, or you are aiming to have this career, please join up. We'd love to see you. We'd love to have you at our meetings. We'd love to have you at future events. If you would like to suggest an event topic, we'd love to hear from you, what you want to see. Thanks for being here, everybody.
Thank you.